Hi, everybody. I'm Cheryl Casoni. Joining me for the hour, James Frischling, co-founder and president at NewOak Capital, and Market Watch's Steve Kelsey. Both of them have a lot to say about this jobs report during this hour. Also joining us, James, this does not bode well for consumer spending. We've got these job numbers. This tells us the consumer is going to be pulling back because they don't have work.
No, and I think one of the issues came out of the report was a loss of financial jobs, business jobs, professional jobs, construction. Manufacturing was strong, but some of those higher paying jobs actually were lost, and that does not bode well for the consumer. So I think the expectations heading into the end of the week were expecting a tough report. The report was tougher and weaker than expected, and that doesn't bode well. And just one last thing, I guess first-time claims for unemployment are at a level that I guess looks back to April. That does not bode well, not to get ahead of ourselves, but I'm not looking forward to August report coming up in about 30 days.
Another jobs report, which means that you may not have a strong fall for the markets like a lot of folks had hoped for, Steve. Steve?
I want to throw this out to anybody who wants to jump in on this question. The S&P 500 companies had a really good earnings quarter, pretty good. There's a lot of cash out there, but I think people are reluctant to use the cash to hire people. What's it going to take? It's a chicken or the egg situation that's out there with hiring, and what's it going to take companies to kind of put in that private stimulus that we'd like to see?
I think James has an answer for you.
It's good. I'll come right to you. Actually, I see this as two different stories. You have the stimulus, the big banks, the big companies who have access to financial markets. They have had help.
They've had stimulus,
and
too.
they're performing.
Yeah.
And then you have the other economy. You have the consumer, the small companies, and clearly the reports are suggesting that they're not doing as well. I think the bet that the government has made is the trickle down, to keep it simple. That if the bigger companies are doing very well, the money will trickle down to the smaller companies. And I guess I'll throw out the question: do you think it's working, or is it too soon to tell?
James, I think that you're channeling your inner Ronald Reagan right now, but I like that. I like to see it. Thanks to all. James, you were talking about the bonds over at BP. Let's get to the money of this company. You've now got pretty much a fight going on with Transocean and BP and Anadarko to the side. Mm-hmm. Where are we with the bonds on BP?
Well, and yet with the news about the well being sealed, you have BP bonds, for example, their 2013s have recovered about 70% of the losses since the spill took place. So clearly the credit markets are getting behind the opportunity, and yet you hear a story like that and you say, really, have things dramatically improved, at least for what's going on down there. But in the markets, BP's cost of borrowing right now, at least indicative in the bonds that are in the market, has come down.
Which could be a net positive for the company's bottom line, but a negative for the bottom line, Steve, again, goes back to the uncertainty with all of these claims.
Sure.
The uncertainty, the legal fight that is now brewing between BP and Transocean. I mean, it never quit brewing, but it's
BP stock is up about 50% in the last month. So that's, at this point, Wall Street is going to maybe take a little breath and say, hey, how much more good news can there be? But again, the oil has stopped flowing. There was a government study out this week that said about half of the oil is either evaporated or been scooped up, but that still leaves a spill out in the Gulf that's bigger than the Exxon Valdez.
Well, we had an expert come on about 3 weeks ago on this program, and he told me, he said, and he was a professor, and he said, the oil is there, but the dispersants eradicated the oil so in a good way. Yeah. But it's dissipated throughout the water. It's tiny, tiny particles. But that, I would think, is going to affect this man's business, the fishing,
fishing,
and that's
tourism,
all. Yeah. He was saying, you're going to be finding layers of oil under these beaches for decades.
They still find some remnants of it, in Alaska too. So it doesn't all go away. A lot of it evaporates. A lot of it is in tar balls, and that's going to be an overhang for a while. But BP, it's incredible that a company has enough resources to at least survive such a big tragedy. So they are going to move past it. There are a lot of overhang there, a lot of costs ahead of them, but they're going to survive. It looks.
James, would you buy it? Would you buy BP stock?
I will simply say that the view from Wall Street is that the problem has now been at least contained.
Sure, it's not getting worse.
And that is why people got behind it.
And they're going to lift the drilling ban,
You asked a direct question, I'll answer a direct answer. I'll give you a direct answer. I'm not buying the stock.
You're not buying the stock.
But again, I do recognize the problem has been contained.
Well, you brought up the bonds, though.
I did talk about the bonds.
Interesting, James. All right, thank you. Pretty honest answer on that one. Coming up, Wall Street.
So these guys are going back and forth all day, a lot of volatility, and a lot of fun if you're a day trader, I can tell you that.
It certainly is. But James, I know that you're not a day trader, but he mentioned the Fed action from next week, and I think what's interesting is that the Fed kind of gives us a lot of nothing, James. What do you have really to trade on?
I think the Fed's going to keep the rates. They're not going to move.
They're not going to do anything.
And now you can start rolling out that expectation for several more months, if not well through into 2011. And I don't want to speculate that far, but I'd say this: the confidence that the Fed's going to hold pat, money's going to be going into the system, and I don't disagree with the run up in gold. And I'll simply say some of the big companies, not to contradict anything I said earlier, but these guys are continuing to tap the market and finance their operations. And I understand why the big companies will do well, and it goes back to how the smaller companies are doing. And we were chatting just when you were off doing the One Touch about, again, the SBA and small businesses and where they're going to get their money from. And I'd like to see actually more activity in the SBA and more commitment directly from the government into small businesses. So
you're preaching to the choir with me, James. I don't know if Steve agrees, but I mean, the small business is really who's suffering right now.